Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye is at the Milwaukee Public Library interviewing candidates in the 2014 elections. We're interviewing Sara Geenen. She's a Democrat running in the 19th Assembly District. Sara, welcome to Wisconsin Eye.
Thanks.
Just this note, Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Sara, I want to ask you about something on your website first.
Okay.
You say one of your chief goals would be to reinstate and protect collective bargaining. Does that mean you go to Madison and one of your first orders of business would be to overturn completely Act 10?
Well, I think collective bargaining rights are really important. I grew up in a labor household. My dad was a maintenance man in a paper factory, and he's a jack of all trades now. I ask him to remodel my bathroom frequently. But I grew up in a family that really valued hard work and valued the importance of workers having a right to negotiate and to have a say in their conditions and how they work. In fact, I'm a labor lawyer right now. I represent unions and retirees. Okay. So I've seen the struggle that a lot of public sector workers face now that they don't have the right to bargain. I think that restoring those bargaining rights is a very important thing. I'm not sure it would be my first step, but it's certainly something I would pursue the entire time I was in office. I think Milwaukee faces a lot of issues, and public education is another really important one, making sure we've got a strong public school system.
Well, talk about that. What do you think are the biggest needs, biggest 1, 2, or 3 needs of MPS, and how would you address those problems? Sure.
Well, I think Milwaukee Public Schools faces such a diverse variety of issues, much more than any other place in the state. We've got students who are homeless, are living in abject poverty, whose parents suffer from mental health issues or drug abuse and addiction and other issues. And at the same time, we're funding a parallel school system with voucher money. At no point with this voucher program are we actually addressing the issues that affect student success, that affect student achievement, and that really allow students to have real opportunity.
Your website said you would phase out the voucher of the choice program over 4 years?
I don't know the exact time period. I think we do know that some any schools, any school district or any time you have a collection, some are better performing than others. Poor performing schools would need to be eliminated immediately. Schools that are performing all right would need to be phased out over a course of a few years, so as not to completely disrupt a child's education. But it would need to end in a shorter period rather than a longer. I think that would be a really important first step. And then prioritizing on fixing the issues, or addressing the issues like poverty and like other social and economic factors that play a role in student education.
This is the time, give us the short version of your background. You're a labor lawyer, but I see on your website you also volunteer at in some of these city schools?
Yeah, well, before my sons were born, so that was about 4 years ago was the last year when I was pregnant with my first son. I coached girls basketball at Bethune Academy on the north side. Middle school girls. I really enjoyed it, and I saw a lot of kids coming from a variety of circumstances, some living with grandparents, some going through different changes at home where they'd live with one parent at one point, an aunt or uncle somewhere throughout the short basketball season, and then sometimes with another person who may or may not be related to them. I also got to see firsthand the hard work so many teachers were doing in the schools and some of the administrators doing in the schools to try to begin to address the social issues or the at-home issues that these students were presenting at school that limited them as well as their classroom in terms of what could be accomplished on a given day. And I think that we need to be cognizant of the whole picture, the bigger picture that comes into play with education.
Does your bigger picture mean, do you support universal 3K and 4K?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. I think I've done quite a bit of, with my own son being 4 years old, and trying to navigate MPS's 3 and 4K system, I began really researching how important 3K and 4K education is, and the studies show overwhelmingly that for students from lower income homes, universal preschool, high quality 3 and 4K education programs are huge boons to that child's likelihood of success.
Big debate in Madison over Common Core standards. Do you support those? Yeah.
I think that they are a really important start. I think these benchmarks are important. They establish basic criteria that would keep keep Wisconsin and the United States as a whole really competitive with the rest of the country. I know I've heard criticism that the earlier standards aren't developmentally appropriate, and I think that some of those things will need to be worked out. I've also heard that there are some issues with implementation. We don't know exactly how it's going to be phased in and how it's going to work in practice. But I think they are really important because there is an emphasis on teaching a child to learn rather than learning specific facts, and there's a lot of leeway within those standards for teachers to teach children to love to learn.
Question on healthcare. As you know, Governor Walker and the leaders of the Assembly and Senate told the federal government, we're not interested in you putting up the money to expand MA. We're not going to expand it. Wise choice or not so wise?
Really bad decision. It ignores a number of important factors. As a labor attorney, one of the things I do is represent retirees in corporate bankruptcies. GM's the best example because it's one of the biggest corporate bankruptcies in history, but there are a lot of other examples where retirees are losing their health insurance benefits. Last spring, I represented with some other attorneys at my firm 10,000 retirees and their widows in a bankruptcy case in which the retirees ended up losing their benefits, their health benefits upon which they relied, the benefits they worked for 30 years. So when you meet someone who's 85 years old and in the end stages of a chronic illness, it's devastating, and I think that Wisconsin has an opportunity with accepting Medicaid money to make sure that people have a better life. Whether it's retirees, whether it's childless adults, whether it's families somewhere near the 200% poverty line but with not enough disposable income to participate in the exchanges or to participate in the exchanges and lead a comfortable life. We've got to prioritize our choices. I think medical care, health care, is not only a basic right, but it's an economic decision. Wisconsin is losing money regularly, and we're incurring additional costs when preventative care isn't obtained, and it's just not right.
A question on transportation. City of Milwaukee needs the Zoo Freeway for people going in and out, the Hone Bridge, yet there's a projected $650 million shortfall in the next 2-year state budget. Should we delay some of these major projects or raise taxes? How would you make up that shortfall?
Well, I think one of the things that I offer in this race as a candidate, that it is a full-scale view of the world, of how things work, of Wisconsin, I suppose, about how things work in Milwaukee and Wisconsin, and how we should be planning for our future. Now, we certainly need to worry about infrastructure and bringing about a solid infrastructure and creating jobs and making sure that people are working at building our infrastructure and keeping it strong and secure. But we need to plan for the future as well, and investing in wider roads rather than trying to prioritize trying to invest in and create mass transit or regional transit besides the highways should be a priority as well. The budget shortfall demonstrates a number of concerns that we also need to address, but it's one of many.
Could you see yourself voting to raise the gas tax or what you and I pay to register our vehicles?
Well, I think that I'm not sure the general place to take money, especially with our schools in crisis, as schools needing additional funding and healthcare funding being another priority. I think we're going to have to seriously consider raising the gas tax. I know that voters overwhelmingly disapprove of it, but they also approve of having good roads. So we're going to have to make some hard decisions there. The gas tax has been stalled since 2006, not indexed to inflation. Sure. It would be wise to reconsider that at this point. In addition, raising the gas tax also does try to encourage people to use alternative means of transportation and to be more energy efficient in their own use.
Your reaction to Judge Crabb's reaction on same-sex marriage?
I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was an incredibly wonderful decision, a long time in the making. I grew up with, since I met my husband 8 or 9 years ago or so, I got to know Betty and Mary, 2 family friends of his who've been together for more than 30 years, and it was fitting, I thought. Unfortunately, Mary passed away last June, so just a year before this decision. But it would have been really wonderful for them to have been able to have their partnership, their marriage, legally recognized. And I can't wait for more families to be legally recognized within our state as families rather than anything else.
I'm asking all 19th district candidates this. Thoughts on why Wisconsin leads the nation in the incarceration of African Americans? I know we could talk a couple hours on this, but just your thoughts?
Well, race obviously is a big factor. We know there's disparate sentencing, disparate prosecution based on race. We know that in some of the suburban areas, things like marijuana citations, for instance, are ordinance violations in municipalities outlying the Milwaukee area, but in Milwaukee, they're punished more severely and they can lead to incarceration, which is a very significant concern, especially for things like marijuana. But I remember as early back as law school it being a very important topic, and it's something that certainly needs to be addressed, because not only is it unfair, it derails lives and prevents achievement in a lot of cases.
And two candidates for Attorney General say first offense drunken driving should be a crime. Do you have a position?
I think it probably should be. Wisconsin's the only state that doesn't have where first offense DUI is a misdemeanor. I think it's a pretty serious issue. It can lead to death, and it should not be treated cavalierly.
Also debated both in Washington and Madison, the issue of minimum wage. Should it be increased?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How high?
Well, I think 10.10 is a good start, but we still know that that's not a living wage. We know that that's not enough to get by in Wisconsin to lead a comfortable, I shouldn't say comfortable, to even lead a modest life.
I want to give you a chance to highlight any important campaign issues that I haven't asked about.
Sure. Well, I think I've probably made pretty clear that education is my priority, making sure that public education is available and accessible to all kids, the best quality public education, regardless of the zip code in which a child is born. I believe that starts with expanding the 3K and 4K programs and making it universal and comprehensive. I believe it requires investing in education for the long haul and investing in public education, as well as addressing the attendant issues. Living wage is going to be a big one. Parent involvement is another factor that leads to great educational outcomes. We need to make sure parents have the time and the ability to be involved. We also need to address mental health and other health care coverage issues that affect play a role in education. Sick children don't learn. Sick parents have trouble being involved. We need to continue that on so that we're prioritizing making sure our public universities and public colleges great, but at the same time not so unaffordable that they derail people coming out of college. We know that student loan crisis is hitting Wisconsin. It's costing Wisconsin millions of dollars a year in economic involvement. Students who graduate with debt are less likely to own a home, more likely to delay having children, more likely to delay purchasing a car. All of those things which would get them to invest in their communities and literally invest in the economy.
Then finally, if you choose to, do you want to highlight any differences between you and your primary opponents?
Sure. Well, I think that as a lawyer, I have a pretty solid educational background for understanding the laws, understanding how laws work in practice, and understanding the bigger picture. When we're talking about laws, we need to talk about they're highly dependent upon the circumstances in which they're applied. And I think that that understanding is important. That what you do here with ABC is going to affect X, Y, Z down the road. And how do we make sure we account for the unintended consequences? Well, we may not know exactly what the unintended consequences will always be. We need to account for what will happen if something does.
Very good. Sara Geenen is a Democratic candidate in the 19th Assembly District. The primary is August 12th. Sara, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you.
Thank you.